the requirement, there are different types of requirements. Just again, we talk about the specific aspects of the business requirements, for instance. So we would then address the business requirements as high level goals, the objectives of the organization. It could be something to do with, I would like to increase the customer satisfaction by 30% in about 2 years. That could be kind of a high level organizational goal, and how that would drive the project that we're currently working on could help drive that goal. So they're more strategic in nature. It could be customer satisfaction. It could be reduction in costs. It could be reduction of operational costs, reduction of the additional variable costs. It could be increasing the performance of the assets that we have as a business. All of these are really high level strategic goals. And these, in fact, are the ones which actually drive all the individual projects that we do. So if you look at it, it's like a program. So there's a portfolio at a very high level. Within the portfolio, you've got different programs. Each program is, for example, it could be one with marketing, technology, infrastructure, customer satisfaction, and so on and so forth. There are different types of programs within each of these portfolio. And then within each program, you can have multiple projects that we take up. So for example, if it's with technology, the digital transformation, replacement of some of the tools that we have, which have been dated, which were developed, for example, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we want to replace or re-engineer them into the latest technology. That could be one project. Another project could be to check the quality of the data that we have in the database, and then make sure we've got better quality of data. So that's another project. And then the third project could be actually redesign the interfaces to make them modern looking. Those are all different individual projects, and each of them are in the technology program, which again is in the portfolio of, for example, customer satisfaction. So this is how we actually can get to work in real life. So a project doesn't get started just like that. It's actually driven by all of these, from a very high level. They have this budget that is allocated in this year or the next 5 years. We've got so much of budget allocated for this. And then they don't have a real clear picture in terms of how they're going to get it done. So that's where the middle management would come in. And then finally the project management and the BAs and the rest of the team would finally fall into place to make sure that each of these individual projects like fit like a Lego set of Lego blocks. And you can actually create the big picture view of the whole program or the portfolio. And that's where I think if you talk about this, for example, here in the business requirement, it could be something like if you're trying to create a website or web-based application that'll meet the quality standards as defined in the organization's policy. So that could be one requirement. But again, because of the fact that it is a general constraint, it's a general requirement, it's a legal requirement. So it could be part of the business one. Now talking about the user requirements, these are specifics about the user. So you're talking from the point of view of user. Interestingly, that's where the user stories come in. If you really talk about the construct or the structure of a user story, it goes something like this. As a user, I would like to do this so that I get this benefit. So as an administrator, I would like to view all the users in my system so that I can take quick actions. So that's one user story. So here, if you look at it, it is actually written and viewed and managed from the point of view of the user. The user could be internal again, or it could be external user. So your customers, your end users they could be salespersons if it is a Salesforce kind of an application, order management, or it could be purchasing department, or it could be an internal person here within the organization. It could be an administrator. It could be an IT infrastructure person. All of these are different users. So the requirements right now the focus had shifted within agile context in terms of the users. It's not technology anymore. It's not business anymore. Of course, it's still driven by the business goals. But when you try and specify and communicate the requirements, it's more from the point of view of the users. So again, you talk about, for example, you would have seen this saying that my website, I'm developing a sports betting website or a sports management application or a Dream 11 type of a website, and it should be user-friendly. What is user-friendly? How would you define user-friendly? Is it something to do with, so you come across this very many times, and that's one thing which I'm not comfortable with. So I try to ask more questions. So what do you mean by user-friendliness? So Is it that they should be able to do some tasks really quickly within some time, within a specified period of time, 10 minutes, 15 seconds. So for example, if you look at the whole purchasing process online, about 15 years or 20 years ago, there was no such thing as a standard. So now I think it was perhaps Amazon which introduced that three-step process. So you go to the catalog, and then you add items to the cart, shopping cart, and then you check out. You give the payment information, billing address, and then you are done. You place the order. The order is placed. So it's in 3-4 steps. That's pretty much standard now. Wherever you go, whether it is eBay, Amazon, or Flipkart, or whatever it is, everywhere it's the same. Whatever website you'd like to standardize the purchasing behavior of users. So, for example, the one of the user requirements could be that I need to complete the purchase process, that purchase task, and I need to be able to place the order from the time I start, creating the order. It should not take more than, let's say, 40 seconds or under a minute. So that's the goal. That's actually a user requirement. So you're actually trying to address that from the point of view of a user. And also, for example, it could be something nowadays we've got all mobile phones. So the app should load in the moment you click on an icon. It should not take more than, let's say, 30 seconds. Yeah, that's a requirement that you can actually kind of say. So mean time to load a particular page, or mean time to actually kind of kickstart the application once it is switched on. So all of these are, again, written from the point of view of user requirements. And functional requirements, we've been familiar with most of the functional requirements. They should be able to do this. It's about doing things, the CRUD, the data retention, the data creation, data aspects, create, read, update, delete kind of a thing. So it's all about how this particular product, application, or a website is able to deliver the behavior, expected behavior, to a particular set of persons. So influence the design. These requirements really kind of drive the whole design. But make no mistake, it's not only the functional requirement, but also non-functional, the quality of service requirements that would help us, as in the architecture and the design teams, to be able to take a really good call about what underlying technology they should use, how they should kind of design the high level and the low level details. And that's where you're talking about the condition, the material, the tools, processes, everything that is important. So it's really comes into play. It's not just about what is to be delivered, but it's about how we can help support the delivery of that particular functionality. So that's really important from the point of view of BA. And then again, quality of service is what we were talking about the other day as well. I gave an example of a project where we just completely neglected this whole thing, and then the report came out almost 20 minutes after the completion of an assessment, whereas the expectation was to the hiring manager was about hardly about 3 minutes after the completion of the test. So there's a huge difference, and that has to be specified, that has to be actually kind of communicated, and the whole architecture and the design should actually revolve around it. So for example, it might need another set of reporting server. It might need a data lake to just put the data into that, a kind of a cube or a BI server, a business intelligence server. It might need multiple servers to make it more fault tolerant and load balanced. So we might actually place it on a load balanced network. All of these decisions, soft and the hard decisions about the tools, the applications, the caching, all of these are driven by the aspect of from the non-functional point of view, not the functionality. So it's equally important, if not more, to focus on the non-functional aspect. So for example, this could be a QoS requirement, as what we call, could be quality of an audio in the application should be that of a DVD quality. So for example, if they say that, then the whole effort of the development team could actually be addressed in terms of how they can make sure that the audio that we're delivering is actually of this quality. So it's not really specifying in numbers or any kind of metrics there, but at least it's giving a kind of a hint to what it could be. So from here on, we can delve deeper and deeper to deliver what kind of, what does a DVD quality audio mean? Should it be in, what kind of compression is involved? What kind of format are we using? Are we using MP3, MP4? Are we using WAV or audio? What kind of audio format it is, the file format? And then what is the compression, level of compression involved? what should be the size of the file. The higher the quality, the bigger the size. So all these are kind of trade-offs, as what we call. So we need to have, and that's where again the assumption and constraints come into picture. So what is the kind of assumption? The assumption in this aspect could be that we do not have a limit on the size, assuming that it could be, for example, when you try and record something on your mobile phone, it actually has a raw format, so it records the video in a raw format. And then when you say that record it anyway, it would actually, you will not be surprised if that goes on into 1 GB, even for just 2 minutes or 3 minutes of video, because of the high definition quality that it actually records the video. So then when you have an option there, whether you want to take, choose that, or you want to go for the compressed format of like MP4, for instance. So that's all of these are again, the decisions, the design decisions, as what we call. We can take a decision based on the assumption, the constraints that we have. So that's where we talk about the assumptions and constraints as those that would limit and influence the implementation. So the solution that we're going to create and work on is actually driven and dependent by these assumptions and constraints. If we don't have these, then we are doomed. So it's important as BAs that we should understand what are the assumptions underlying when we're trying to identify the problem or create the solution. The assumptions could be that about, it could be about the business related stuff, the business rules, the constraints around business, constraints about technology. For example, if somebody asks you to come up with a platform or a technology delivery, digital platform, for instance, to create and deliver a digital platform for example, to do the audio, to Spotify type, to create audio peer-to-peer kind of application for a digital platform. So if you want to deliver that kind of a thing, you need to understand what are the technical constraints, what are the current systems that are being already in use. You don't want to actually kind of do you want to create a completely ground up application, greenfield, or you want to actually leverage on the existing set of applications? So it's a decision again. So that's where we're talking about the assumption. So you need to, as BAs, we need to validate that assumption when we discuss with the stakeholders, whether it's technology stakeholders, operational stakeholders, business, customers, marketing, sales, all of these, whatever, infrastructure, all of these different perspectives. We need to have a good understanding, a robust understanding of what this particular set of application that we're going to create, what are the underlying assumptions, and then validate those assumptions. I was talking about yesterday on the assume thing. Do not assume, because we would make an ass out of you and also the other person. So ass of you and me. So let's not assume. If you are assuming something, state it, put it clearly, and validate, get it validated with the right stakeholders. So that's very, very important. The reason for that is, as we are mentioning here, assumptions are outside the control of the team. They're bound by it. They cannot do anything. And say it's also with constraints. They kind of restrict the choices. If the existing applications are already on J2EE, for example, or they're already an open source, then you cannot suggest a platform or a tool which is on a vendor specific network. For example, a Microsoft .NET based application. You cannot create that when you already have a huge setup of applications running on Java, for instance. Then you cannot just say that, okay, I've got a completely different one. I mean, that's a constraint, because that's a technology constraint. So also say the same thing with the business as well. Business constraints, they could work with in terms of business rules, the regulatory requirements. We talked about the HIPAA, HL7. We were talking about the GDPR, for instance. They're all regulatory stuff. They are constricting, they're restricting the way we would create the applications. So we need to have a clear understanding of these, and not only understanding, we need to communicate them. We need to specify them very clearly, get them validated and verified by the right stakeholders, so that they're captured rightly. And that's where, for example, if you're trying to develop a website, it must meet, for example, if it's a public facing website like the gov.uk or gov.in, some of the websites that we have, they're accessed across by different spectrums of people, different spectra of people, ranging from different abilities. So they need to be adhering to the accessibility guidelines, and then as dictated by the by either the DDA, the Disability Discrimination Act of UK, or Section 508 of US, or any of those in India. So it doesn't really matter. What matters is that you should know the rules of the land. You should make sure that you're sticking to those laws, the regulations, and the constraints as applicable to that particular set of industry as well. Sometimes it could be industry. For example, if it's a healthcare application, hospital management application that you're trying to develop, that you're going to deploy in a clinic, you need to actually kind of get the HL7 and HIPAA regulation in board. You should actually make sure that it is compliant with that platform, with that set of regulations. And in terms of implementation, so that's where we're talking about implementation requirements are specific to a solution. So that's basically they're the last leg in the whole thing. So you need to make sure whatever we try and deliver are actually kind of adhering and compliant with the implementation requirements. Sometimes it could be to do with the technology. For example, if it is to do with a web application, you say that it should be responsive design. That's not enough. The requirement could be that this should be a highly responsive web application. Then you should ask the question, if that is the case, what kind of platforms that you're considering? Should we consider Windows phones as well, Windows mobile phones, or is it just only Android and iOS? If that is the case, you should also ask one more question as to how far back do you want to really comply? So for example, right now we're talking about iOS 11, iOS 12. So what is the kind of, how far should we go back in terms of the compliance? Should we go back all the way to iOS 10, iOS 9? The same with Android as well. Is it going back to which version of the software application? What kind of device I should work with? All of these, they should be kind of, as BAs, we should specify them really clear, crystal clear. So there's no doubt for the person who is actually designing the solution, whether it could be the architect or it could be the person designing the visual aspects of it. It's and once they say that the implementation requirements are basically driven by the solution. So once the solution is deployed, then it's no longer valid. You don't have to really be bound by it because they change as per the technology. So for example, if you're developing a new application, for example, if it's an order management application, or if you're trying to create an e-commerce application, that then the requirement could be, the implementation requirement could be that it should work with the underlying ERP system. You might have an SAP system, for example, which is already in place, which has some of the modules like sales and distribution, or it could have some of the modules like financial reporting. So your newly proposed application, the e-commerce website, should actually work well with the existing ERP modules. You don't want to actually have another, kind of new application created just for handling that. So that's where you need to be playing the part of, the BA come technical analyst come non-functional aspects. You should be able to actually kind of envisage the interfaces, the integration requirements, and be able to actually, see in advance all of these and at least, flag it off. We're not experts in this, but you should ask the relevant questions when you're trying to design or develop something new. Then you should say, should this application be working with any other existing application? What kind of applications do you already have? Then that actually gives you some answers. And then you can ask, what technologies are these? What platforms are these existing applications currently working on? So should the new one that we're talking now to develop, how well should it actually work with these existing applications? Can it be a standalone? So these are the kind of questions that you should ask to the relevant stakeholders.